Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our workshop on Take the Leap, Transitioning the Law Firm to Agile Frameworks. My name is Randy Bridges, and I've spent the past 12 years helping legal teams like yours embrace change for the better. Today, we're here to tackle a crucial question: how can a law practice become more adaptable, efficient, and client-focused? Let's dive in, shall we? First of all, my background is in technology. It's not in legal. I work as a consultant partly because of that and partly because of my understanding of how the systems work within a legal practice. I started in technology for legal in 2012 and began really diving into how the practice actually ran with the systems that it has. And it got me a kind of a unique perspective on how things run. So today, when I'm working in the systems and with the practice itself, this is something that really takes on a new perspective for me. Agile, being a software development framework, was a great way to go about doing structured work so that you were constantly being able to cycle things through. And I started looking at some of the different aspects of doing this, and I wanted to see how it would fit into other types of companies. So I used it in a lot of professional services because that's where I've been for the last 17 years. And I worked with like tax, and I worked with finance. And I said to myself, some of it will even work in medical. Why not work with it in legal? So I took that as a hint to be able to do this, and I wanted to put Agile as a framework into the legal setting. Now, the evolving landscape of legal services and the need for flexibility and responsiveness ties well. It dives right in with how Agile works and goes through in its processes. So let's set the stage, given that Agile is a potential way of getting things done. Now, let's start at a familiar place, the traditional law firm model. Picture this: workflows that are set in stone, processes that leave little room for sudden changes, and a culture that views adaptation as an afterthought. These practices lead to inefficiencies, client dissatisfaction, and a struggle to keep up with the pace of change. Anyone here who's ever felt trapped in this cycle knows it's a common story, and it's where our journey to Agile begins. If we look at the status quo problem, that we are outlining common challenges in the law firms that they face with traditional frameworks. It's a lot of rigidity, inefficiency, client dissatisfaction, and the difficulty in adapting to change. I know that as a professional, you know how to run your practice, but your clients don't necessarily always see it that way. And if we look at real-world scenarios where traditional practices have led to bottlenecks, missed opportunities, and client frustration, you know the problem. You know it every single day. And so I see that there's a need for change. We want to stress the importance of evolving and adapting in today's fast-paced, client-centric legal environment. Before we go any further, let's talk about how we fix this scenario. First of all, there's a beacon of hope. The gap between where law firms are and where they want to be efficient, they want to be adaptable, and above all, client-focused. And it's not as wide as it seems. If we look at Agile as a methodology and a mindset that changes and champions flexibility, continuous feedback, and an iterative process, we can explore how this can be our bridge to a better practice. Now, let's discuss that gap, first of all, because current challenges of where law firms want to be is a structure that Agile is very good at. It's not just a methodology Agile is in, it's a mindset shift that addresses those exact same kinds of gaps. So if we do a quick rundown on Agile principles, right, we want to look at how they contrast with traditional models. Usually traditional law firm models are you know, they're really rigid. They're very structured. They're very hierarchical too. Attorneys work at the top, paralegals in the middle, and then you have staff members and all kinds of different people working at the bottom. And, you know, if you take that as being a structured answer to how everything goes about the day, it's great if you work from law firm to law firm to law firm because they're all going to be the same. But when you bring in Agile, what you're bringing in is not just a thinking process. You're bringing in a whole new way of breaking cases down. You're able to take case management tools and use them to their maximum, right? Because what we really want to do when we're looking at a case is prioritize client feedback. It starts and ends with the client. And so when the law practices, and when I say we, what I mean is the legal field and how I fit within it. You know, if we can take those cases and break them down into what the client really wants, not what they say they want, but what they really want, and look at the lifetime value of this client and say, maybe not just today, but how about tomorrow? What are they going to need after this case? A great example of that is divorce, right? Because there's divorce up front, there's child custody, there's dissolution of materials and all the different pieces, not to mention alimony, things like this. These cases roll on for years. I personally was involved in child support that lasted for over 30 years before I was able to get everything completed. And that's with my daughter already, well beyond high school and college. She's in her 30s now. And, it was not until just recently, in the last year, that I was able to complete everything I needed to do. So this is kind of how we look at things. And if you don't understand your cases go that long, then you're going to look at it case by case by case. But you have to set your client's expectations up front about what is going to happen along this case process. And it may be multiple cases. For you as an attorney, you want to break it down into principles. You want to start with that client feedback and then break all the work into manageable chunks. Agile basically says we're going to work in sprints. We're going to do like two-week sprints, and then they focus that direction. It's great, but what happens is you not only have to break it into chunks and work in sprints, it's faster if you actually build teams that work together rather than have a hierarchy and move things up and down the stack. One of the things I was talking about today in my podcast was the difference between an agile concept as it's flowing. It might move from here into here, and there's some crossover. And that crossover allows the pieces to move smoothly from one to the next to the next. Whereas in traditional law practice, it's you do your work, you get it done, you set it down. Somebody else has to pick it up, do their work, finish it up, set it down. Somebody else has to come in and, pick it up, do their work. And this is over and over. And every time this happens, there's more and more of a chance that a case is going to drop through the floor. You're going to lose it, you're going to miss it, and you're going to be sitting there wondering where it went. Agile allows you to move this smoothly through the process. Since you're working as a team, you're like sitting down every day and looking at what people are working on, so you're aware. And it gives a lot of benefit to the cross-training process, because if a law firm can work in sprints and adapt to changes swiftly, they can involve the client in the process. And that's going to make the client feel better. And they're going to get a lot more out of the process because they're going to feel like they're part of the impact that it comes from. Now, if we look at the framework itself, okay, and say how Agile principles can be specifically applied in a law context, It's covering case management, client interaction, and internal process. Agile starts and ends, as I said, with the client. We want to look at Agile to improve client satisfaction, enhance our team collaboration, and get greater adaptability. Now, if we share examples of law firms that have successfully implemented this, what we end up with is looking at practices that basically you build a series of teams, right? This is difficult when you only have one or two people, but the people have to work nonetheless together. And they get a chance, if we talk about this, one practice that I dealt with really had a really, horrible experience with their clients before, and we brought in Agile to be able to help them. And it was a simple case. It was not difficult. But what we found is that attorneys were able to provide better guidance to junior, and the associates, and even to staff, to how to solve some of these problems that they were going through. And so then when somebody was done with that case, they then had all that same knowledge that they could move to, a higher level within the practice. And that's something that a lot of people forget about, is that people do leave your law practice, and moving from a staff to a paralegal, there might be some legitimate challenges in there. Nonetheless, if a staff member feels that they can self-train and self-work and take on more work as they learn to be able to do more, they're going to be able to provide more benefit to the practice. And many times when people will move from law firm to law firm, the problems that they had over there are the same ones they have over here. So if they can solve them in an iterative way, they can then use them when they move to another law practice. And then you, as an attorney, are able to gain from that, because these people are bringing in talent that you didn't have to pay for, and that, you get to take advantage of pretty quickly. So essentially, we're looking at changes needed for success. Transitioning to Agile is more than just adopting new practices. That shift in the mindset means we must embrace the concept of learning from failure, encourage experimentation, and commit to continuous improvement. It's difficult sometimes to do that because case law doesn't necessarily allow us to always improve. We're going to lose a case, we're going to win a case, but it might not be on the reasons that got us into the problem. It might be because we lost something, we forgot something, we didn't get it, right? And so this also means investing in our teams, equipping them with the skills to navigate an open environment, and revisiting our processes to ensure that they align with open principles, not just these real structured, rigid things. If we look at the mind shift, there's a cultural shift within the firm to embrace failure. We want to be able to make mistakes, help cover those mistakes and deal with them as oversights, and then be able to encourage more experimentation and foster continuous improvement. Now, from a skill set enhancement point of view, we need that training that comes from a staff that thrives in an Agile environment. Again, when everybody's working together as a team, you look at the practice, you look at the case from the top, everybody's working together. And so when one person has a problem, someone else can help them solve this. And so that's a training moment as you go. Cross-training is always a really good and inexpensive way to improve the way any kind of business runs. Now, we need to revisit and revise existing procedures and workflows to align with the new methods in advancing your cases. This is something that a lot of people forget about, is that the processes you're doing, the workflows you're dealing with, are actually taking a whole new perspective on things, because now we're going to be able to advance cases in new ways, maybe model ways that help to go into a new transition for the material. And we can leverage existing resources for that transition. Okay. Every law firm has a foundation to build on. You have your talent, your technology, your existing processes. And the transition to this new mindset leverages these assets. It's guided by a clear assessment of where you stand and where you need support, whether it's through engaging with practice coaches and leaders, tapping into technology that facilitates better workflows, or fostering a community of practice within and beyond your firm. These resources are successes that are within your reach. So, if we look at this and you want to audit your current resources, what are your talents? What are your technologies? What are your processes that can be changed and adapted to support the agile transition? Again, we're going to be breaking down the hierarchy and moving it more horizontal, working as a team, so that we still have team leads, we still have case managers, but basically we're able to have everybody work together, and if one person can advance something to help someone else, it's all the better. And if we look at extended support and partnerships, we can have new technology providers. I personally, work with companies like TimeSolve. I work with Clio. I work with a lot of different companies that give the availability to be able to use new technology in the practice that helps to kind of guide things along the way. So you're not necessarily, let's say you go away from certain types of cases from hourly billing to fixed fee. Now, Agile would say this is a great way to transition because fixed fee allows you to move things to the most efficient person, not necessarily the hierarchy. And so a lot of people say, well, I can't do fixed fee. Fixed fee is really for things like, cases that are involving, for example, estate sales and estate work. Those are perfect for going to fixed fee. Uncontested divorces. Again, you know exactly what the paperwork is going to be. You can practically fill it out in advance, and it's going to work for you no matter what. Surprise, now you can move things along very quickly, and it can be handled very fast by support staff, by paralegals, and then the attorney already knows what it looks like. They've already approved the process that's going to be used. So all they have to do is look at it, agree to it, sign it, or better still, pass it back, and then it gets stamped legally and digitally signed. And so this is something that a lot of people have forgotten about. And Agile Frameworks will give us a way to start looking at profit within the business of the practice, right? And we want to be able to integrate that as a shared experience for everybody. So now if we look at this, we've already journeyed through the landscape of legal practice, from the familiar territories of traditional frameworks to the promising horizons of new methodologies, Agile being only one. Just keep in mind, that's only one way that we can do this. Now, it should be evident to you that the path forward demands not only a change in our processes, but a profound transformation in our mindset toward adaptability, collaboration, and an approach that is client-centric. As we conclude this first part, the evolution towards an Agile framework is not merely an option, but a strategic imperative for law firms. If you're aiming to excel in an era marked by rapid technological advancements and changing client expectations, your leap of faith is required. The resources, the talent, and the potential for innovation are already within your firm. It's incumbent upon us and you to harness these strengths, guided by the Agile philosophy, to usher in a new era of legal practice that is dynamic, responsive, and aligned with the highest standards of client service. That journey to the new law practice is both a challenge and an opportunity to redefine excellence in legal practice without changing the way law is handled in court. Let's embrace this journey with open minds and a commitment to excellence. Once again, I am Randy Bridges, and it's time for us to take a couple of minutes and transition into the Q&A section of our workshop. I'll be right back in 5 minutes.